Most of us were taught that the only way to guarantee quality in property management is to keep our hands on everything. The gut check, the vendor call, the approval, the one weird owner exception only you remember, and there's pride in that. But there's also a ceiling, because when you become the engine of the business, you eventually become the limit of the business. In this mini episode, David Normand and Tyler Nelson join me through clips from a recent Vendoroo webinar to break down why the hustle that got you here may be the thing keeping you stuck. We're dismantling the idea that being involved in every maintenance decision equals control. Because real control doesn't come from participating in every work order. It comes from encoding how decisions should be made, so the system can move without you. This isn't old school automation. This is a new operating model for staying in control while stepping out of the weeds. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. You don't feel out of control because there are too many work orders. You feel out of control because every work order still needs you, your approval, your vendor preference, your memory of which owner hates surprise bills, your gut check on whether this is tenant responsibility or owner responsibility. And that's the trap. Because most property managers think control means staying close to every decision. But that's not control. That's dependency. The real frame break is this. Control is not what you hold on to. Control is what you build into the system. Your NTE thresholds, your vendor routing rules, your escalation triggers, your property-specific exceptions. That's the operating system. Today, we're breaking down why the PMs winning with AI are not the ones using a tool. They're the ones training a teammate, and they're discovering something uncomfortable. The only way to stay in control is to stop being the control point. Most PMs start with the wrong frame. They ask, what can this tool do for me? But you don't manage maintenance with tools. You manage maintenance with people, judgment, systems, and follow-through. So the first shift is not technical, it's managerial. Listen to how I frame the starting line. Today, we're going to talk about something that we have been talking about for a very, very long time, but there's a new inflection point in it. And it's this idea of treating your AI as your teammate is the number one indicator of success. Like that mindset of really taking this like teammate mentality is the number one thing that we want you to walk away from here feeling convinced and empowered to do. That's the whole episode, hiding in one sentence. Because tools get clicked, teammates get trained. And if you expect AI to own maintenance without giving it the same context you'd give a new coordinator, you're not delegating. You're gambling. The issue isn't whether AI is ready. The issue is whether your business logic is ready to be taught. Here's where the definition of control changes. Most operators think control happens inside the work order. The approval, the message, the vendor dispatch, the follow-up. But high-performing PMCs move control upstream, before the ticket exists, before the resident is frustrated. Before someone slacks Sarah asking what to do, David calls these the control points.
There is a very clear signal to why the group of people that are succeeding are cruising at such a high altitude. And it's the idea and the understanding of the control points. Control points are the importance of our NTE thresholds, our property-specific information, our escalation triggers, how do we follow up with vendors, our policies, our vendor routing, how they're submitting information and how we're capturing that. All the things that you guys know that run your business and help you succeed is what we pour into an employee when we hire them.
That's the mechanism. You are not losing control when AI follows your NTE rules. You're gaining consistency. You are not losing control when AI routes to the right vendor. You're removing the who remembers John problem. Control is not touching every work order. Control is defining the decision path so clearly that the right thing happens without you having to supervise every inch of it. That's the difference between being the operator and being the architect. This used to be theory. Now it's showing up in the data. The PMCs getting the best outcomes are not necessarily the biggest teams, not the most tech-forward teams, not the ones with perfect SOP folders. They're the ones investing early in the teammate. They're feeding it the rules, exceptions, vendor knowledge, and business context that used to live in people's heads.
So the data is in. Let's take a look at who is succeeding and who is struggling, and it's super clear. Okay. So here we show that the people who are investing into their teammates, just like a new hire, are the ones that are clearly succeeding and the margins are significant. Just like when we're investing into a new employee into our office, there's no difference when we're working with our AI teammates. The evidence is clear that early investment and education are leading to success and pretty consistent success.
That's the uncomfortable part. AI does not magically fix a vague operation. It amplifies the clarity that already exists. So if your maintenance process depends on hallway conversations, memory, or just ask Maria, AI is going to expose that. Not because it failed, because it finally made the invisible visible. This is where letting go becomes practical. Nobody is saying, hand over every edge case tomorrow. That's not the play. The play is to remove the repeatable 80%, the status follow-ups, the vendor routing, the resident clarification, the threshold-based decisions, the work that should not require a senior operator's brain every single time.
It kind of looks a little bit like this right now. Basically, you can expect, if investing into one of your agents or investing into your RU, that 80% of your work is really defined and can be automated and off your plate. That's just what the expectation and kind of like the benchmark that is happening across the board. So 80%, I invest into my teammate, take that off. 20%, I'm still going to be a little bit involved. It's pretty consistent across the board.
That's not autonomy without accountability. That's leverage. You stay involved where judgment matters. But you stop inserting yourself into work that only needed your rules, not your hands. This is the new maintenance model. Humans define the frame. AI runs the play. Humans step back in when the play breaks. That's control without bottlenecking. But there's a catch. When you give AI a process, it doesn't just execute it. It reflects it. And that mirror can be uncomfortable because most PMCs don't have one maintenance process. They have the process they think they follow, and the process the team actually uses at 4:47 on a Friday. Tyler explains that gap.
The next piece is client workflows. These are really cool because everybody comes in with their perception of what their workflows are and what processes people are following. And once your AI teammate is released and implemented in your team and in your business, it follows a cadence, it follows workflows and holds people accountable to those cadences. And it really shines a light on where are certain pieces broken, where are areas of opportunity, and do we need to tweak this? And it shines a light on what reality is versus what people were perceiving their process was.
That's the mirror moment. You may think your team always gets 3 bids, but your history says you call the same vendor 80% of the time. You may think your approval threshold is $500, but your behavior says otherwise. You may think the process is documented, but the real process is sitting inside the head of the person who's been there 6 years. AI doesn't create that chaos. It exposes it. And exposure is the first step toward control. Top performers don't just dump more rules into the system. They simplify. They ask a better question. Does this workflow still make sense when the system can actually execute consistently? Because some workflows exist only because humans needed workaround after workaround. But when the teammate can remember the rule, apply the rule, and show its work, you can redesign the workflow.
One of the things that we're seeing top performers doing is that when something is getting flagged because it's potentially a complicated workflow or there's gaps in it, it's actually an opportunity to say, hey, does this make sense in an automated world? Can this be improved? And we're seeing that a lot of the top performers across the way are actually simplifying workflows or better defining them. And that's helping taking them out of the process more and more. And it's still achieving an outcome.
That's the deeper frame break. AI adoption is not just automation. It's an operational audit. It forces you to ask, why do we have this step? Who is this protecting? Is this policy real or just inherited friction? The best PMCs are not using AI to preserve messy processes. They're using AI to clean them up. The fear is always the same. If I let go, how do I know what happened? That's fair. Property managers have been burned by delegation before. A coordinator makes a weird call. A vendor gets dispatched wrong. An owner asks why something was approved. And suddenly, the operator is reverse engineering a decision from 3 texts, 2 notes, and someone's memory. But this is different. David explains why.
As a property manager myself, I've never had the opportunity just to look at a work order and have all the information at my fingertips as to why my teammate handled this the way that they did. You can live here and you can see your timelines. You can see your work order views. You can see your next steps. There should never be a time that you don't have visibility to understand, why did this happen? Why did this decision get made that you don't have insight into and can't reinforce it, or you can't adjust the behavior? You're in complete control there.
That's the trust builder. You're not blind. You can see why the decision was made. You can reinforce the behavior. You can adjust the rule. That's not less control. That's better management. Because now your teammate does not just act. It shows its work. This is the end state, not another folder. Not another SOP nobody opens. Not another spreadsheet called Vendor Noted Final Version 3. The real designation is a central operating brain for maintenance. Your policies, your vendor preferences, your property exceptions, your owner rules, your tribal knowledge, all in one place.
The ideal state, guys, right, is that for the first time as property managers, we're able to take all the information that is stored in Google Docs and different spaces and in our brains and knowledge, and we're able to bring it into a centralized space that our business runs and operates on. Put that knowledge in there. Just like, hey, John's great, best to communicate with him by text, handles all minor maintenance jobs. However, does not like to work on, external sprinkler systems. Cool. Now I know John's bio, right? Put that knowledge in there. And that's how Roo is so successful at assigning vendors.
That's the move. The knowledge stops living in Google Docs, inboxes, side conversations, and people's heads. It becomes usable, executable, coachable. And once that happens, AI stops being software. It becomes the teammate that runs your playbook the same way every time. So the question is not, how much control am I willing to give up? That's the old frame. The better question is, where does control actually belong? Because if control only exists when you personally touch the work order, you don't have control. You have a job that cannot run without you. But when your standards are encoded, when your vendor logic is clear, when your escalation paths are defined, when the system can show why it made the call, that's when you get real control. Not louder control, not tighter grip control. Architect control, the kind where the work moves, the rules hold, and your team stops asking you to be the brain inside every ticket. Control is not what you hold on to. Control is what keeps working after you let go.